trying to type this, and for some reason my phone is just really seriously messing up tonight. So, so here's the game, and it's always been the same. It's never been different. But here's the game, and if you're interested in psychology, you'll be interested probably in this, because yeah, it's a psychology kind of game. So, so I have asked my dad for help, and really, honestly, had no communication with him for years on end, but probably 3 or 4 times since I got out of high school. um, and in school, I didn't talk to him for years either. So the bullshit that I'm like, a money grubbing freeloader is bullshit, because I haven't been around for years on end. So anyway, but here's how this works. I have this mother who's severely mentally ill. She's not a little bit mentally ill. She is severely schizophrenic. And because I was raised entirely alone by her, she was divorced. I didn't really, when I was young, when they got divorced. So it took me years to sort out truth from fiction and the reality of all of this. And so a quality of schizophrenics is that they're also sociopathic. They're like the whole bouquet of things. But I would say early on, definitely schizophrenic, sociopathic were two things, and narcissistic. So those things were definitely at play when I was young. And so because of this, she had taken advantage of many, many people, and far more than I ever knew, probably way far more than I still know. But people were totally disassociated from her, because if you read the textbook on schizophrenia, it's the only way to get free of them is to just walk away and never look back. And it's sad to say, but there's no cure for it. There's never ever in history, in the medical books, ever been anyone cured of it. It's not something that is cured through talk therapy. There may be drugs that kind of control it, but nothing really ever stops it. So, and it progressively gets worse over time. And in the case of my mother, her mother sold her and her brother both in the home of a bootlegger, but when my mother was 3, and it lasted until she was 9, for the purpose of sex trafficking. And as I understand it, her brother, who's now deceased, had many, many problems also. And then the mother married, and the abuse continued for another several years. So there's a reason for it, but we can't fix it. So my mother had forgotten all of this until about the time I graduated high school. And I think it was the separation anxiety of the possibility that I might, leave home and never have a life of my own, that created her to have full-scale clinical flashbacks of all of the abuse she went through when she was really young. And the way it happened, we were living together, and we were in a very stranded situation, which is a whole other story. But she relived every single assault and event that had happened to her as a child, in these very graphic and detailed flashbacks, where she went physically out of body and was like flying above herself, looking down at the age she was. So she might have been 3 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old, looking down and witnessing these assaults, but relaying them with all of the emotion that had been repressed, partially because the woman drugged her, and partially because she blocked it out because it was such a traumatic thing. But she relived all of these events over a period of like 14 years, just in daily flashbacks that went on for years and years and years. In the middle of this, we have jobs and we work every day, and we're trying to, sort of keep some normalcy in our lives. But, and I tried then desperately to get her help. I was like 19, 20 years old, and this went on into my 30s. And same thing like now, if you've been following these posts lately, I mean, this has been going on for 25 years now. And nobody would help us. There were no programs. She didn't qualify for anything. There was just nothing available. And, people have to be paid. And I understand that. I mean, and this stuff's very expensive. Currently, to get her as an evaluation, it's $8,000, but there's more hurdles than that. So, it's, and there is no cure for it. So, like, you're throwing good money after bad, even if you have it, um, which I wouldn't do. I mean, she's 83 years old. So, okay, but so here's the game with my dad. And so, if you're, fascinated by psychology and psychology issues, or if you're just, curious, because it's a really weird, bizarre thing. So he owns the largest industrial scale company, one of the largest ones in the United States. I think probably the largest in the state of Texas for sure. I don't know. I know there are in other states. Um, so it's not like he's going to be financially burdened, by helping me once every, 12 years or something. Um, but I understand his frustration and anger, and that he was married to this woman for 18 years who basically just tricked him into marrying her in the first place. She had been engaged 5 times, and she already had a dress, and she had flowers paid for at the florist and all of this. And I mean, she literally just marched him down to the church and got married after she put a notice in the newspaper. So, and she's admitted all this. So, and then he spent 18 years trying to get away from her. And so that's a whole other story. My book, A Kooky Little Road Trip of a Well-Crafted Life. It's very interesting. It unravels a lot of this stuff, but also it's just, bizarre stories. So if you're up for, bizarre stories, that's it. And it's not mean-spirited. It's just strictly fact-driven with lots of data. And I have had some very mean-spirited things in the past because I was trying to unfurl so much of this for so many years. And, that will probably never end. So, but anyway, so the deal with my dad is he loves to dangle me over a fire, and it's a very sadistic situation, and it stems from his wife and her children, and I mean, this is when it all came into play, and it's always a group activity. So, sadism is a group activity in this environment. So, but the way it works is I don't ask for help because you would think your dad would be your first phone call if you were a girl. If you were a girl in trouble, you would think the very first phone call, if you were really desperate for help, you could call your dad. And no, I mean, he's my very last phone call. I would rather slit my own throat as call him. And I have many times put myself in great peril to not call him. He has no idea all the times, that I didn't call him. He's not a hero rescuer by any means. Um, and never has been. So, but and he was always very kind and very generous. I think he's known as being kind and generous, just not with me. But when you grow up with a situation like this, when you have a parent who is particularly with schizophrenia, because it's a mental disorder that always encompasses people getting screwed, basically. It has, the thief and liar aspect to it, and people get sick of getting screwed. So if you have a parent who is a schizophrenic, you're alienated or I was, because by everybody had been screwed by my mother, and I didn't know it. I mean, because at home she's preaching all the right rules, she's preaching all the, teaching all the good values and all this. So it's not that she doesn't know, it's that her twisted mind plays a different game. And I've even had people ask me that, like, where did you get all your values and your work ethic? And because you don't operate this way, and I don't. But I'm not. She actually explained this during COVID. She said, I never taught you to be like me because I wanted to take advantage of you, and I taught you to always be honest and good, so that I would never be playing this game with you that I play. So, I mean, this is twisted, right? Because she flat out said that. So, so my dad had spent like 18 years trying to get away from her and getting constantly screwed by her. And I think this is a common trait of schizophrenics. In my mother's case, it's absolutely a trait of it. She creates instability. So she does everything she can to create financial instability so that you have to stay. You're stuck. You're constantly digging your way out of a credit mess, or you're constantly doing something, and so you're attached. You're just like on this short leash because she keeps you just constantly financially tied up. You'll find this quality a lot of times with drug addicts too, where they're just constantly juggling balls and keeping you chasing your tail. And if you followed my post lately, you get it. Like, I mean, the quick changes, 50,000 times a day are ridiculous, and it's gone on for years in one way or another. So so there's that aspect of it, and then growing up in this, you're so isolated. You live in this alternate world that is the world they're telling you, that is not really reality, but you don't know because all you know is what they tell you, because that's your parent and your mother, and she's never going to lie, right? And so the other side of this is she started developing early, in my early teen years. That's when I became aware of it. Could be it happened earlier, but definitely in my early teenage years, she started developing multiple personality and dissociative identity disorder, where she actually has alternate personalities or spirits or these characters that she talks to and sees and interacts with. She has visual and audible hallucinations, and these are people that I have come to know over the years. And I will even ask her, like, how's Clack and how's Ivan and how's these are ghosts she talks to. They're not real people. And I'm conscious of this and I know this, but they've been a part of my life for years and years and years and years and years. So it's kind of weird. And so this is one reason I've always been so isolated from people, because although I understand this and I'm consciously aware of what's going on. No, you stay. Sorry, got a cat bugging me. Well, I'm consciously aware of what's going on. You can't have people over for dinner or anything. You can't have her involved in long conversations. If you know me as a customer and like we've been in your store for sales, you notice how I'm constantly keeping her on script and on track. And this is why, because she will tell you all about all of her other lives. She had 2 sets of twins and a set of triplets, and my dad sold them all. It's bullshit. I'm an only child. She had a baby before me that was stillborn, but she believes she's had all these babies that were sold in black market adoptions and stuff. And then she stalked a celebrity for over 30 years. She stalked Clifford Parker Robertson, Oscar-winning actor, claiming that he was her father. And she stalked one of his children, claiming that that child was a child that she'd given birth to and he'd adopted. So, like, she's done some fucked up, twisted things, right? And so, I'm trying to sort out reality from fiction and all this. And of course, if you know our lives, my mother, and this is true, she actually was President Johnson's bookkeeper when she was pregnant with me. And then, we lived in California and worked in the entertainment industry. So we do have some legitimate famous connections. So even for me, it was hard for years to kind of to separate reality from fiction. And her stories were so well crafted that they were plausible. Like I would look up facts on Cliff Robertson, who actually there were some connections to towns and places and people that made it plausible, but there was no truth to it. And the way I finally figured it out was through DNA testing. But it's just so messed up. So I gotta get some water. Hang on. So the situation with my dad, and I understand his frustration, and God bless him. I do love him. He's not the most intellectual person you'll ever meet, and his success is questionable and mysterious. But he's got the business, so by however that happened. But so I understand his frustration. He's really frustrated, and then he also has had many health problems for many years, which I'm sure also impacts that. But then he was attracted to my mother, who is a schizophrenic and a sociopath, and obviously there was some attraction. They did get married, and he was very frustrated, and they got divorced, which now I understand. For years I didn't really thoroughly get it, and he got hooked up with the next door neighbor, and they've been married for years. But this is similarly sociopathic, narcissistic, and sadist. And I'm not saying this critically, I'm just saying this objectively. They have these qualities. And so this complicates the relationship. So here I am, an only child. with this mother who's not rooted anywhere in reality. I mean, she's not a little bit crazy. She is crazy on a textbook level. Like her case, if it had ever been studied, would probably be in psychology textbooks. Although there's no cure for it, we have no money to do anything about it. But it's one of those things. Like it's not minor in any scale. So, um, and I have read every psychology book under the sun because it all got dumped on me, and we had no money, so I had to do what I could to figure it out. So, so in the case of my dad, so you would think, that I could call that if you were a daughter in a desperate situation, you could call. You would first thing you'd say, I got to call my dad, and he's my last call ever. I mean, and I have put myself in terrible situations to not call him many times and just didn't do it because this is how it always goes. So he immediately married Judy he moved in with her like immediately. We live next door, and so um um so for me to call him, it's never it's never like me calling my dad, hey, I need a favor. I think he would probably do, anything if he could, if it was just that relationship. But because the relationship is complicated, um, by this other situation, there's always been this need, and this is a narcissistic need for sure, and a lot of women have it. I worked in retail a lot of years where they get in a relationship, they're divorced, especially in this Protestant culture, because like these people, man, they've got 4 or 5 husbands, 12 families. It's crazy. And because women trade up. If you live in a culture that does not educate women, and that specifically teaches women to kowtow to men and to not read books and to not compete with men, and women grow up with this idea they're never going to have to work and they don't want to learn anything, so if they learn anything, God forbid, they might have to get a job. And that was something, women used to say in this part of the world was like, don't learn to do it because you'll have to do it. So then, the pride is in knowing nothing. So then to get ahead in life, the only way to do it is to marry up. And so you have the starter marriage, and then you have people trading up. And this is why women are not friends in this culture. If you get in the West Coast, if you get up north, women are friends with each other. You have girlfriends, even if you are married. But in this culture, you don't, and this is why, because women have to trade up. Because if they're not educated and employed and industrious and making money and driven to get ahead in other ways, and the only way they do see to get ahead is to get married, then friends are a danger because somebody's always looking at your husband for their next trade up. And this is why women don't have friends in this part of the world. And so if you wonder, friends are a good thing, but not in this situation. So because of this, Judy has this very territorial nature, and a lot of women do. When they latch onto the second husband or the third husband or the fourth husband, however many husbands there are. I know women here, they get 5, 6, 7 husbands, but and it's normal. This is the culture. It's normal. It's not my normal, but it's normal. So anyway, with women like my stepmother, they immediately want to, because this is how they get ahead. It's not necessarily that they fell in love, which I don't think they did. I don't think love has anything to do with it. When the relationships are transactional, it's all about money and property and getting ahead. There's no emotion in it because we're thinking transactionally. And so, and this is a transactional situation for sure. So women like this, and Judy included, when she married my dad, she wanted everything to be around her and her kids. And so, like, when I would come visit, which I rarely did, I didn't have to, and I didn't because it was not pleasant, I would be, introduced as the nanny, or they'd say, oh, here's our 2 kids and the spare, or, and so it's never, that sort of situation. And and of course, this was all because she was climbing and, wanted to drive, money and property and stuff to her and her kids, which she did. She's been very successful at that. And so, so for me to call every 12 years or 8 years or something and say, I have a desperate situation and I need help. And mind you, if you know me, I work 7 hours a day. I sleep maybe 4 or 5 hours. I look like crap. Look at the dark circles in my eyes. That's not makeup. Like, this is normal. And, you know, um, but I'm a deadbeat and a bum, and I'm somebody who just takes advantage of people. Now, granted, my mother has done that, but they're imposing that personality on me. That is not me. And if you followed me for any amount of time, I've been online for years. Anybody knows that is not me. And so, but this is what happens. I'll have a really desperate situation, and it will start out with, oh, let me help you. Oh, just let's figure out what you need. And, just very, complicit and helpful. And like, this is the bait. They reel you in. He reels me in, but Judy puppets everything he says. So, oh yeah, tell her to figure out just anything she needs, right? And so you'll see my posts with the little hearts around them. This is him. Yeah, just tell me anything you need. We'll figure it out. I'm going to help you. I'm going to do anything you need to help, right? And so this will go in 2 or 3 days, which it did the last 2 or 3 days. I'll post it. You can see. And then 2 hours earlier in the afternoon today, I get another one. We'll just do anything you need. Just, we'll figure it out tomorrow. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning and we'll get it all figured out. So I replied to that note, and 2 hours later, I got a great big, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. This is normal. Years ago, I would have been crying and in tears and just thinking the world's falling apart. And it could. I mean, they could totally pull the rug out from under me. And they might. They very well probably would do it. They sure have before, so it wouldn't be a first. But this is the game. So now we're at this phase where they're dangling me over a fire. Are your feet hot yet? Are your feet hot yet? Are your toes on fire? And, they're sadist. They are. They have this sexual desire to inflict pain. That is the definition of sadism. And, and it was the definition of their relationship. Anytime Rusty would insult me when I was a kid, he was rewarded with sexual favors by her. And they sort of always made comments like this when I was a kid. All kinds of just crass comments. And it's the same thing. They're in their 80s now. So, but the habits are the same. So, they're dangling me over the fire. And, over time, when you go through these situations, you just learn it's in God's hands. They're a lot closer to hell than I am. But, it's just sick and twisted. So I have this situation, and anybody who has a mentally ill parent, and a third of the people in the country have some sort of mental illness. But any child who grew up with a mentally ill parent probably grew up in a divorce situation and grew up being the caretaker for the parent, which I did. It's why I never got married and had kids, because I have this permanently disabled adult in my life who can't function, without help. And so you take all the slings and arrows because around you, people automatically either superimpose your psychotic parent's personality on you, or they look at your elderly, sweet, gray-haired, mother who just seems so sweet and so kind and think, well, you must be the problem. And so all the slings and arrows come your way. Any little thing they do is your fault. And it has always been. And so that's one side of it. And then, so the other side of it, you have this other parent who feels the need to dangle you over the fire and slit your throat and make you bleed and see how much pain they can inflict before you just, scream and cry for their sexual partner's pleasure. Isn't that perverse? But that is it. It's so Freudian and fucked up. But that is it. That is actually the that is the scope of it. And so as a kid, I'm growing up in my mother's fantasy world and the reality, and then constantly moving, I to this day don't know family on either side. I mean, the isolation of this is just unfathomable to most people. And then you're constantly working through psychological disorders within the periphery, and it's appalling, but it's also, I guess, a little bit fascinating how much the human psyche can truly bear. Um, so yeah, but so the thing about a schizophrenic too is that they love to keep you unstable, like I mentioned earlier. So on the one hand, I have this mother she's desperately trying to destabilize me. I've been stable in a steady address for 9-10 years now, right? And normally in our life, we've had like 4 or 5 years in an apartment, and then she'll create all kinds of shit, and then we wind up on the road for 4 or 5 years, where we're just living hotel to hotel to hotel, city to city to city, state to state to state. Me making stuff like a maniac to pay these insane hotel and restaurant bills because I have this mother who is narcissistic and histrionic, who loves the lifestyle of it. So she's strategic. I mean, this is why she creates this instability, because she wants this lifestyle and she wants somebody else to fund it. It's exactly why she thinks she's having the affair with Elon Musk, because she wants the lifestyle and she believes he will fund it. It's no different. It's the same stupid thing. And it's why she's so quick to want to kick me to the curb, because she's got Elon Musk, this trillionaire. It's so fucked up, right? And then on the other side of this, I have this one parent that I can reach out to. I've got a very stable job ahead that took me months to get. And I have, a house and furnished and, finally stability. And then I have this parent on the other side of this situation who is just happy to pull the rug out from under me just to watch the tower fall. And he's done it many, many times. And he would do it again. Sure, of course he would. Because it would provide sadistic pleasure for his wife and her children. And, it would be something that they could all get drunk on the patio and have big laughs about and tell these polluted stories to their redneck friends. And then everybody could make these stories bigger and more grandiose. And I could disappear for a few years and they could be very popular. And then, I'd finally get a little stability again and come around again. And it would make them mad, because I had, you don't die, you don't fall off the edge of the earth. I learned that years ago. I lived in so much fear for so many years when I was a kid. I mean, I shook constantly when, the years we were on the road. People would ask me in stores, like, why are you shaking? Because I'm freaking terrified. Yeah, I'm literally terrified. I'm on the road with a schizophrenic, psychotic woman who is having delusions and hallucinations, and my life depends on this sale. And of course, you don't say it, but you know it. You're conscious of it. You think it. And I've lived in this fear all my life. And both parents inflicting it. And I used to have to constantly remind myself, because my relationship to them both was always emotional. But I have had to learn to compartmentalize that and understand that their relationships with me are entirely transactional. And a lot of times the currency they're transacting in is revenge on each other that is transacted through me. And I think we all go through a lot of that in life, but maybe we don't always see it because it took me years to see it. So maybe it's a good idea to hear it, so that if you recognize that in your own life, you gotta recognize it and see it to ever figure out a way through it. So for me, this is all karmic. This is all, part of the lessons that get you through life to the next phase. So I have always learned to deal with these things in that I'm going to learn a lesson from this, and I'm going to move on. And I will move on in, whatever way is best for me. But, if God says my tower falls, then there'll be a rainbow ahead for me somewhere. And if they're acting maliciously, and I believe they are, then that karma's on them, you know. And I don't think they care because they don't really, because every relationship with them is transactional. Their relationships with God and church are also transactional. And in this event, I'm talking about my dad and his family, because they've always talked about, they gave so much money to the church, it didn't matter what they did, they were forgiven. So, I don't know. I've got a lot of opinions with these fucked up churches around here, so, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, it's all so messed up. But if you're interested in the psychology behind it, I mean, it's, there's kind of like a fascinating thread to all of it too. But yeah, it's good. If you, especially if you live in this part of the world, I know every single person who lives in this part of the world has got some fucked up, screwed up mess, in family, because there's no stability in families in this part of the world. Very, very rarely do you see any evidence of it. Which is sad. I would love to see that turn around, but I'm never gonna have kids or a family anyway. So, and that's also just the reality of my situation. It's not my choice. It's just, you know, that's how life works. So, stability is the goal, but sometimes, sometimes the people around you um, aren't the best people around you, and in that case, that's both of my parents. True story.